The new translator. The sky above Veritas was dark purple with clouds that shimmered like metal. Captain Jace Morgan stepped off the ship ramp, his boots landing on the soft red soil. This planet always made him feel like he was standing inside, a dream, or a warning. Jace was a human representative, sent to talk peace with the Veridan Council. The mission was simple: speak, listen, stay calm, and don't start another war. He'd been through worse jobs, but something about this one felt strange. The silence in the air was too perfect, the guards looked too tense, and when he saw the translator waiting for him at the edge of the landing zone, everything in his gut told him this wasn't going to be simple. She stood still, dressed in a plain gray robe. Tall, slender, with deep blue eyes that didn't match the rest of the planet. Her name was Sarai. "You must be Captain Morgan," she said softly, bowing her head. "I've been assigned as your translator during your stay." Her voice was calm, smooth, almost too perfect. She spoke every human word like she'd been born with them. But there was something else. A weight in her eyes. A sadness that didn't match her quiet tone. "Just call me Jace," he replied, offering his hand. She looked at it for a moment, unsure, then shook it lightly. Her touch was cold. The city of Veritas Zen was made of black stone and silver towers that pulsed with soft light. They moved through the streets, Sarai walking 2 steps behind. She translated for him when guards barked orders or when officials gave long speeches full of formal nonsense. She was efficient, respectful, and never smiled. But Jace noticed things: how she avoided eye contact with older Veridan soldiers, how she winced when she heard the old ceremonial horns, how her hand trembled for just a second when someone mentioned the day of collapse. That night back at the guest quarters, Jace couldn't sleep. He kept hearing her voice in his head. Smooth, proper, but empty. He decided to take a walk. The halls were quiet, soft lights flickered along the walls. He passed empty rooms, closed doors until he heard it, a whisper, soft, ancient, not in English, not in any modern Veridan dialect either. He followed the sound. The voice came from a narrow hallway behind the storage wing. The guards never patrolled here. It was the old part of the palace, shut down after the war. Jace moved slowly, pressing his ear to a large steel door. Inside, the voice continued. It was Sarai. Her tone had changed. She wasn't quiet now. She was full of fire. He couldn't understand the words, but they echoed with power. Royal power. The door creaked as he pushed it open slightly. The room beyond was filled with dust and stone. At the center stood a broken throne half covered in vines and rubble. The lights on the walls had long died, but something glowing from Sarai's palm, lit the space with a pale blue hue. She stood before the throne, eyes closed, whispering in a language lost to time. Then she stopped. "How long have you been standing there?" she asked without turning. Jace froze. "Long enough to know you're not just a translator." She turned slowly. Her face wasn't angry. It was tired. "This place," she said, looking around. "No one is supposed to come here. They erased it after the fall. They erased me." Jace stepped inside, his voice low. "Who are you really?" Sarai's eyes met his, and for a second he saw the truth. The way she stood, the way the lights around her responded, the way even the dust seemed to part for her. "I was born here," she said. "In this palace, before the war, before the betrayal. I was the last daughter of the Veridan line." Jace didn't speak. Sarai looked down at her hands. "They told me to forget, to hide, to survive. I became a voice for others, never my own." He looked at the broken throne behind her. "Why now? Why show me?" She gave a bitter smile. "Because the empire that killed my family, they're returning. And if they find me, you won't just lose your translator." Her voice dropped. "You'll lose this whole planet." A voice of royalty. The room stayed silent for a long time. Jace stood in the doorway, staring at the alien woman he thought he knew. Sarai didn't speak again. She looked at the broken throne like it still carried ghosts. Dust danced in the cold, blue light from her hand. It flickered slightly, reacting to her heartbeat or maybe to something deeper. Something ancient. "You were a princess," Jace said slowly, still trying to understand. "I am," she whispered, correcting him gently. "But only in blood. Not by name. Not anymore." "Then why serve as a translator?" he asked, stepping closer. "Why stay hidden while your people suffer?" Sarai turned to him, and for the first time, Jace saw a different version of her. Not the quiet helper. Not the polite assistant. Her face was sharp now, noble, cold, beautiful like a blade. But underneath there was pain. Deep, old pain. "Because the ones who killed my family," she said, "they didn't just take the palace. They took history. They rewrote the records. They made it look like we were the traitors." "You're saying," Jace's breath caught, "the rebellion, the one the High Council blames your bloodline for, that wasn't you?" "It was staged," Sarai said bitterly. "My father begged for peace. My mother opened trade routes with the outer systems. They called it weakness. So the high military staged a revolt, made it look like we turned against our own." Jace leaned against the wall, trying to absorb it. The Veridan Empire had always been described as cruel, but stable. Now he wasn't sure what was real. "You said they're coming back," he said. "Who?" She looked away. "General Calvox. He was the one who placed the crown on his own head after my father was executed. He vanished after the revolt. Many thought he was dead. But I intercepted a transmission 3 days ago." "You didn't tell command?" Sarai shook her head. "The humans here are being used as shields. If I raise an alarm, he'll strike before help can arrive." Jace exhaled sharply. "So what's the plan?" Sarai looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't have one yet, but I need to find something first. Something only my blood can unlock." Before Jace could ask more, a sudden boom echoed through the halls. Both their heads turned. Another boom, closer now. "Guards?" Jace whispered. Sarai shook her head. "No, that's a breach." They ran through the old passageways, emerging near the west wall of the city. Above them, in the sky, a large ship appeared, silent, black, shaped like a spearhead. It wasn't Veridan, and it wasn't human. Sirens blared across the district. Sarai's eyes widened. "That's his mark. That's Calvox." "How the hell did he get here so fast?" Jace asked, already pulling out his sidearm. "Because he's already been here," Sarai said darkly. "He's been watching, waiting for me to slip." Suddenly, a deep voice echoed over the city's comms. "People of Veritas, where the true power has returned, do not resist. The daughter of the fallen line walks among you. Bring her to me, and no harm will come to your families." Jace looked at Sarai. Her face had gone pale, but she didn't flinch. "Have to leave," he said. "He just put a price on your head." "No," she said. "I have to show you something first. Something only you can carry out if I fail." Before Jace could argue, she grabbed his hand and led him through a back tunnel. They descended deep beneath the palace ruins, past ancient machinery and strange glowing symbols carved into the walls. The air grew thick with pressure, like it didn't want them there. Finally, they reached a massive sealed door. "This was our family vault," Sarai said. "It hasn't opened since the night my mother died." She pressed her hand to a panel. The door hissed, lights blinking in a long-forgotten pattern. As it opened, a wave of cold air rushed out. Inside, strange machines slept in the dark. Weapons, archives, blueprints of technology Jace had never seen before. And at the center, a glowing cube hovered inside a beam of light. "What is it?" Jace asked. "Hope," she said. "Or a last warning. It contains a message from my mother and a map. The truth about what Calvox did and how to stop him." As she reached for it, the room shook. Above them, something exploded. Sirens screamed louder now. "He's attacking the city," Jace said. Sarai turned to him, holding the cube in both hands. "If I don't make it," she said, "you have to Take this to the council, show them everything. Make them remember who I was and what was stolen. Before he could promise her anything, a beam tore through the ceiling. Fire rained down. The vault trembled, and from the dust, dark figures began to descend. Jace pulled his weapon. "You're not dying tonight, princess," he growled. "Not on my watch." Enemies in the shadow smoke filled the air. Dust choked every breath. The ceiling above cracked as another tremor rocked the ancient vault. Pieces of stone rained down, glowing dimly from the heat of the blast. Sarai held the glowing cube close, to her chest. It pulsed softly like it was alive, like it could sense the danger. Jace stood in front of her, gun raised, eyes locked on the shadows that had appeared in the smoke. Tall, armored figures moved like silent ghosts, each one wrapped in matte black armor with glowing red lines. They weren't soldiers. They were hunters. "Move back," Jace said without looking at her. "You drop, you die, got it?" "They're called the Black Fangs," Sarai whispered. "They only answer to one voice." "Calvox," Jace said. Sarai nodded. "They were once royal guards, twisted, corrupted. He turned them into shadows. Now they don't stop. Not until the target is dead or captured." One of the Black Fangs raised a strange, curved weapon. Not a gun, not a sword. It pulsed like it fed on fear. Jace didn't wait. He fired. 3 shots in a tight burst. 2 hit armor. 1 pierced a joint. The hunter dropped but didn't scream. It just slumped like a puppet with its strings cut. Then the others charged. "Run!" Jace shouted. He grabbed Sarai's hand and pulled her through a side tunnel. The walls shook around them, ancient pipes bursting with pressure. Red emergency lights blinked on, casting everything in warning color. Behind them, the sound of metal claws scraping the walls echoed louder. "Where does this tunnel go?" Jace shouted over the noise. "To the old transport bay." Sarai called. "Back. But it's locked, no power. We'll find a way." They reached a steel hatch. Sarai placed the cube against a scanner. The machine hesitated, then clicked. The door opened slowly, revealing a dark chamber with ancient vehicles. Hovercrafts, bikes, and one strange, sleek shuttle covered in dust. "Can it fly?" Jace asked. "If it remembers me?" Sarai said. She ran to the shuttle and placed her palm on the control panel. Nothing. She closed her eyes and whispered something in her native tongue. The shuttle lit up. "Yes," she breathed. But as they boarded, a deep voice echoed from behind. "You disappoint me, princess." They turned. A tall figure stepped into the bay, flanked by 2 more Black Fangs. His armor was heavier, crueler, twisted like it had been fused with living metal. His face was hidden, but his voice was like a cold knife. "Calvox," Sarai said quietly. "You should have stayed forgotten," he said. "You think crawling back from the past changes anything?" "No," she said, lifting the cube. "But the truth does," Calvox chuckled. "You don't even know what truth is. Your parents were weak. Your bloodline was a stain. I did what had to be done." Jace raised his gun. "Yeah? Well, do what has to be done now, and bleed." Calvox flicked a hand. Jace was flung backward by a sudden wave of force. He slammed into the wall hard and didn't move. Sarai screamed. She ran to him, kneeling beside his unconscious body. Calvox stepped closer. "I'll let you live, princess, but only if you give me the cube." She looked up slowly. Her voice was calm now. "You killed my family. You stole my name. And now you want my soul?" She stood, blood dripping from her hands, the cube glowing brighter. "You can't have it." The cube flashed with light, blinding. Calvox shielded, his face. When the light faded, Sarai and Jace were gone. Only empty air remained. Miles away, deep in the wastelands beyond the city, the ancient shuttle touched down hard on a broken cliffside. The engines hissed, barely holding together. Inside, Jace groaned as he woke, blood on his forehead. "You're alive," Sarai said, kneeling beside him. Her voice trembled. "I've been hit harder," Jace muttered, blinking. What happened? I used the cube, she said. It has more than just data. It has defense protocols. Old ones linked to the royal bloodline. It created a jump gate, just one. Now it's burned out. So we're stranded? For now. They stepped out of the shuttle and looked around. Dead land. Black sand. Skies full of silent lightning. Jace touched his head. What now? Sarai looked at the cube. Its light was fading, but it still pulsed. We follow the map inside this, she said. It leads to the Arkstone, a memory core buried before the fall. It holds the voice of my mother, and the truth that can destroy Calvox's rule. Jace nodded, steadying himself. Then let's get moving. But deep underground, beneath the cratered surface, a listening post flickered to life. It had heard the cube's activation, and in a dark chamber far away, Calvox opened his eyes. She's going for the Arkstone, he said. Send everything. The buried throne. The desert was endless. Black dust swirled around their boots as Sarai and Jace marched across the wastelands. Lightning cracked overhead in the silent sky, but no thunder followed. Only wind. Sharp, dry wind that tasted of rust and ash. Every few hours, Sarai checked the cube. It glowed faintly now, barely, clinging to life. The path it showed wasn't just coordinates, it was remembering, guiding her home through forgotten emotions. You okay? Jace asked, watching her from the corner of his eye. Sarai nodded but didn't speak. She wasn't okay. Every step closer to the Arkstone pulled up memories she had buried. Of her mother's voice, soft and warm. Her father's laughter in the golden halls. The blood on the steps when they were taken from her. They walked for 2 days. No sleep. Barely any food. The desert didn't allow weakness. On the third morning, the cube pulsed once, then dimmed completely. They had arrived. Before them stood a canyon cut deep into the earth. It looked like a scar. Jagged metal spires jutted from the rocks like ancient bones. Below, hidden in the shadows, was the entrance. This is it, Sarai whispered. This is where the throne was buried. They descended carefully. Dust filled their lungs. Jagged stones scraped their boots. At the canyon floor they found the sealed door, a massive slab of silver metal with ancient markings that shimmered when Sarai touched them. Jace stared at the door. What is this place really? Sarai looked at him. My family didn't just rule. We remembered. We were the keepers of memory. Every truth, every betrayal, every law, every lie, it was stored here, in the Arkstone. And it's still in there? She nodded. If Calvox hasn't found it yet. Yes. She pressed her palm to the center of the door. It hissed, then opened. Inside was darkness and silence. They stepped through carefully. The tunnel was wide, shaped like a rib cage, with glowing symbols along the walls. The air was cold. Too cold for this planet. It felt like walking into the breath of something ancient. Keep your weapon ready, Sarai said softly. Always, Jace replied. As they moved deeper, the air changed. It was thicker, heavier, almost electric. Then they saw it. The throne. Not a chair, not anymore, but a huge crystalline structure growing out of the floor. Floating above it was the Arkstone, a sphere of glowing white-blue light. It pulsed slowly, like a sleeping heart. Sarai approached it. Her hands trembled. This is what they feared, she whispered. This is what they tried to destroy. What does it do? Jace asked. It remembers everything. Voices, events, secrets, and truths the galaxy has forgotten. Sarai placed her hand on the stone. A wave of light swept through the chamber. The symbols on the walls lit up. A soft hum began to rise. Then, a voice filled the room. My daughter. If you hear this, then I am gone. Jace flinched. This is Queen Alira. You were only 6 when they came. I saw the betrayal before it happened, but I could not stop it. General Calvox was once our strongest protector. But power corrupted him. He allied with the Shadow Lords beyond the Rim. He traded our safety for control. The voice trembled. He took your father from me, and then he came for you. We placed you in hiding. We sealed the Arkstone, and we waited for this moment. If you have found this, then you are ready. My child, you must remember who you are, and show the galaxy what was stolen. The Arkstone pulsed once. A beam of light shot from it and struck the far wall, revealing a hidden chamber behind the throne. They stepped through. Inside were recordings, thousands of them, old meetings, treaties, war logs, maps of hidden bases, even files on Calvox's experiments, the dark ones he denied for decades. This is proof, Jace breathed. This could bring down his entire army. Sarai nodded, but her eyes were distant. What's wrong? Jace asked. We're not alone, she said. He raised his weapon, and that's when the lights went out. In the darkness, they heard it. Breathing, then the growl. They turned, weapons up, but saw nothing. A red light blinked in the corner. A tracking beacon. He knew we'd come here, Sarai said. He wanted us to find the Arkstone. Above them, the ceiling cracked. A voice echoed in the dark. Thank you, Princess, Calvox's voice said. You opened the door I could not. Now, watch it close behind you. The entrance slammed shut. Explosives. The room began to collapse. Jace grabbed the Arkstone, tucked it into a reinforced satchel, and pulled Sarai by the hand. Move now. They ran through the data chamber as the ceiling fell, dodging rubble, smoke filling the air. There's a back tunnel, Sarai shouted. My father built it for escape. But behind them, something else was coming. Not soldiers, not black fangs, something worse. A machine creature of twisted metal and flesh, dragging broken limbs, its eyes burning with red fire. What is that? Jace gasped. His experiment, Sarai whispered. One of many. Failed soldiers from the war, but they never died. The creature roared and lunged. Jace fired. It stumbled, but didn't fall. Go, he shouted. They ran into the escape tunnel, as the beast followed, ripping metal from the walls. Jace turned, tossed an old grenade, and hit the trigger. The tunnel lit up behind them. Fire swallowed the monster. He shockwaved threw them both out onto the surface of the canyon, gasping, bleeding, and alive. Barely. Sarai clutched the satchel with the Arkstone inside. Jace looked up at the shattered sky. We need to run, he said, his voice raw. Sarai nodded, but she knew it was no longer a secret war. It was a race. And now, the galaxy would have to choose between a tyrant's lie or a forgotten princess's truth. The price of a crown wind howled across the canyon as dust choked the morning sky. Sarai and Jace didn't speak as they limped across the rocks. The explosion had left them bruised and burned. Their supplies were gone. Their shuttle was still buried under layers of wreckage back in the wastelands. But the Arkstone was safe. And now, it was glowing again. Brighter than before. It pulsed like it sensed the time had come. At dusk, they reached an abandoned relay tower on the edge of the highlands. It was old, built during the first human-Veridan alliance, long before the fall of the palace. Jace managed to rig power using the emergency cells from his weapon pack. Inside, the tower flickered to life. Sarai placed the Arkstone into the central port. It connected instantly, its light flooding every corner of the station. Jace stood beside her as holograms filled the air, proof of Calvox's crimes. Transmissions, torture orders, secret plans to infect entire systems with fear serum, his true face, his betrayals. His voice ordering the deaths of children who bore royal marks. We need to broadcast this, Jace said, his voice tight. Not just to Veritas, to the entire sector. Sarai looked at the screen, but didn't answer. What's wrong? He asked. If we do this, she said, there's no hiding anymore. I become the face of the rebellion. No more shadows, no more second chances. You knew this moment would come, Jace said gently. Sarai turned to him, her expression raw. I knew it, but I didn't want it. I didn't ask for this crown. I didn't ask to be the one who lived. He stepped closer. Maybe not, but you are the one who lived, and you're not alone. She met his eyes and something shifted. The pain stayed, but something steadier rose beside it. Purpose. She nodded. Help me set the signal, she said. Together they prepared the transmission. The relay tower had an ancient galactic link buried beneath its frame, a last resort beacon that could reach every major world within 2 jumps. Jace recalibrated the arc channels while Sarai recorded the message. Her voice, calm but fierce, echoed through the control chamber. To the people of Veritas, to those beyond the stars, I am Sarai of the Fallen Line, daughter of Queen Alira, heir to a name buried in lies. You were told we started the war. We did not. You were told we fell. We did not. We endured. And now I show you the truth. She played the evidence, voice logs, war plans, Calvox's betrayal in cold detail. Stand with me, not for a crown, not for revenge, but for the right to choose truth over fear. If we do nothing, he wins forever. Jace triggered the beacon. The signal launched, vanishing into the night sky like a silent star. They waited. Minutes passed, then an hour. Jace sat against the wall, cradling his blaster. Sarai stood near the beacon, watching the stars. What if no one answers? She asked. Someone will, he said. Because you gave them something real. The screen blinked. Response. Multiple responses. The screen filled with signals from hidden colonies, rebel strongholds, exiled leaders, some human, some Veridan, some other races neither had seen before. They had seen the message. They were ready. But then, a warning. Unknown fleet incoming, untagged. Mass signatures suggest high-grade military vessels. He's coming, Jace muttered. Sarai turned. Her face had changed. No longer afraid, no longer hiding. Then we make our stand. The next day, at the edge of the ruins of Thalaran City, an army began to gather. Old mechs reactivated, ships cloaked in civilian colors uncloaked, revealing rebel fleets. Soldiers from across systems arrived through hidden gates. Some had never met each other. Many had once been enemies. But now, they followed one symbol, the fallen crown, and one name. Sarai Jace stood beside her, watching as captains and commanders knelt not in tradition, but in respect. She wore no robe, no jewels, just armor made from her mother's palace guard, reshaped and reforged. She looked out across her people. You still have time to back out? She said to Jace, half smiling. He shook his head. I've bled for this. I'll bleed again. She touched the shoulder of his armor. I'm glad you were the one who saw me first, not the crown. Just me. A shadow fell over the valley. Calvox's fleet had arrived. Dozens of black warships, Hunter-class destroyers, orbital cannon crawlers. Their engines darkened the sky, and at the front his personal dreadnought, the Tyrant's Vow. They'll strike in an hour, Jace said. Sarai looked at the horizon. Then we strike first. As the armies clashed, smoke covered the skies. Jace led the ground charge, directing human and Veridan forces side by side. His instincts, sharp, fast, human, caught Calvox's generals off guard. He fought not for glory, but for the woman who had taught him that silence wasn't weakness and memory wasn't shame. Meanwhile, Sarai took to the skies in an old royal command vessel, calling ancient codes that disabled half the enemy's command signals. She led with power, but ruled with heart. As the battle turned, Calvox's voice broke through the comms. You will never be queen. You are a ghost. Sarai responded calmly. No, I am your ending. And with that, she gave the order. A signal strike, using codes from the Arkstone, targeted the Dreadnought's power core. It exploded in the air, scattering black ships in all directions. The sky caught fire, and for the first time in 20 years, Viridis saw dawn without fear. The fall of the Pretender. The sky was burning. Above Viridis, the final phase of the war had begun. Fire rained from the wreckage of falling ships. Pieces of metal, glowing hot, crashed into the mountains beyond Thalaron. It was not just a battle anymore. It was a reckoning. Sarai watched from the royal bridge of her mother's restored flagship, her armor scorched, her breath sharp. Her hands were steady, but her eyes revealed the storm inside. She had brought them here. The people, the fleets, the hope. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Not until he fell. On the other side of the sky, within the shattered remains of his dreadnought, Calvox lived. Barely. The explosion had torn through half the ship, destroying power cores and slicing decks, open to space. But his personal chamber, buried beneath layers of forged steel, had held. His faceplate was cracked. One eye bled dark fluid, but he stood, towering, armor humming with rage. "Initiate Protocol Omega," he growled. His remaining officers hesitated. "Do it!" he screamed. Hidden codes were activated. Deep in orbit, 3 black obelisks awakened, silent weapons built in secret. Death machines, their only purpose, to destroy entire surfaces from the upper atmosphere. "They will kneel," Calvox whispered, "or they will burn." Back on the ground, Jace led an infiltration team into the heart of the ruined capital. Word had reached him that Calvox might be alive. And Jace knew one thing for sure. If Calvox lived, the war could still be lost. The people needed more than a victory. They needed justice. He moved through fire-scarred alleys with 4 alien fighters. At his side, 1 Veridan sharpshooter, a human hacker, and 2 twins from the silent world of Kelnar, blades gleaming in their hands. "Target is beneath the ruins of the old War Council," the hacker said. "I've cracked the shield codes." "We have 1 shot. Make it count," Jace growled. They descended through tunnels filled with smoke and twisted metal. Broken statues of Calvox's fake empire lay crumbling, faces shattered. Jace remembered the first day he met Sarai, how silent she had been, how strong she had become. He didn't fight for the crown. He fought for her truth. At the bottom of the ruins they found it, a final command center sealed, humming with corrupted royal tech, and at its center, Calvox. He stood tall, sword drawn, armor now fused to his own skin. His voice echoed in the chamber like a machine possessed. "You brought them to die, Captain." He sneered. "No," Jace said, stepping forward. "I brought the truth." Calvox lunged. The fight exploded. The Kellner twins met him with their blades, quick, deadly. But Calvox was faster than he had any right to be. Augmented. Twisted by tech, never meant for life. He crushed one twin with a single blow, sending the other flying into the wall. Jace opened fire, rounds bouncing off Calvox's armor. The hacker tried to shut down the power core, but Calvox threw his blade across the room. It pierced the hacker's chest. Only Jace remained. He stood alone, breath ragged, gun empty. Calvox stepped forward, towering above him. "You're just a man," Calvox said. "A forgotten species trying to matter." "And yet," Jace replied, pulling a hidden detonator from his belt. "You're still afraid of us." He triggered it. A wall of light exploded behind him. Sarai walked through the flames. She was covered in soot, her eyes glowing with fury. In her hand was the Arkstone, now pulsing bright, alive with ancient codes. "You lied," she said to Calvox. "You murdered, you rewrote history." Calvox laughed. "So what? Power is what survives." "Not anymore," she said. She raised the Arkstone. It activated a final protocol, something only the royal line could unlock. Every corrupted system around Calvox's body shut down. His armor fell silent. His limbs locked. He tried to speak, but Sarai stepped forward and drove a blade, her father's blade, through the center of his chest. His last words were a whisper. "You were never supposed to return. He fell, and the room fell silent. The war wasn't over, but the heart of it had been ripped out. Once the obelisks lost connection with Calvox, they shut down. His army splintered. Many surrendered. Others fled into the dark corners of space. On the plains outside Thalaron, survivors gathered. Sarai stood before them. Not on a throne, not on a stage, but among them. She held the Arkstone in one hand, and her mother's crest in the other. "I don't rule because of blood," she said, her voice echoing across the ruins. "I serve because of truth." The people cheered. Jace stood nearby, blood on his arm, exhaustion in every breath. Sarai walked to him. "You should rest," he said with a small smile. "I will," she replied, "when there's time." They stood together, watching the stars, and, from above, dozens of worlds began to send messages of peace, of alliance, of rebirth. The pretender had fallen, but a new empire, one of memory, mercy, and truth, was just beginning to rise. Crown of two worlds. The war had ended, but the echoes of fire still lingered in the sky. Across Veritas, cities burned and rebuilt at the same time. The smoke of fallen towers mixed with the banners of rebirth. The tyrant was dead, but his shadow hadn't vanished. Power didn't disappear, it scattered, looking for a new home, and all eyes now turned to one woman. Sarai. Not just the hidden princess. Not just the voice of rebellion, but the rightful heir to an empire that had been stolen and reclaimed. In the central chamber of the old palace, now rebuilt with the help of both humans and aliens, the coronation was set to begin, but Sarai wasn't ready. Not yet. She stood alone in the reflection chamber beneath the throne room. A quiet space lit by soft blue crystals, where the kings and queens of her bloodline once meditated before taking the crown. She stared at her own reflection in the water. Gone was the translator who walked in shadows. Now she wore robes woven from the banners of fallen houses. A blade hung at her side, not as a weapon, but as a symbol of memory. Her mother's voice still echoed in her ears from the Arkstone recordings, but another voice haunted her now. Calvox's final whisper. "You were never supposed to return." "He was right," she said softly. Behind her, footsteps echoed. "Maybe," Jace replied, stepping into the chamber. "But you did anyway." He looked older now, not by years, but by everything he'd carried. Bruises still faded across his jaw. His left arm bore a new scar where Calvox's blade had nearly ended him. "They're waiting for you," he said gently. "And if I'm not ready?" she asked. Jace shrugged. "They'll wait anyway. They don't want a queen. They want you." Sarai looked at him. "You stayed," she said. "You needed me," he replied. "You could have left." "I could have," he agreed. "But I didn't want to." Silence filled the room. Finally, she asked, "What now?" "Now," Jay said, "you go up there and show them who really rules this empire. Not through fear, not through force, but through truth." The throne room was filled with people from every corner of the galaxy, leaders of former colonies, tribal elders from the fractured clans, human officers from Earth's diplomatic corps, rebel captains who had fought in the final siege. The room was circular, like a great eye watching history unfold. Sarai entered to silence. No drums, no horns, only the sound of feet shuffling as people stood, not out of command but out of respect. She walked slowly to the center. An ancient platform rose from the floor, where the crown of the old empire rested. Not gold, not jewels, but a circlet of shimmering crystal wrapped in living light. It hovered before her. Then came the choice, a new crown, or none at all. Sarai took a breath. "Before you ask me to rule," she said, "you must know the truth." The room froze. Family built this empire on peace, not power. We protected knowledge, we honored memory. But when Calvox betrayed us, he didn't just kill my parents. He rewrote everything. Turned history into lies, turned fear into law. She looked around the chamber, and for a time you believed him. Gasps echoed. Some lowered their heads. But now you've seen the truth, she continued. And still you look at me and ask, what next? She paused. I will not rule alone. I will not repeat the mistakes of the past. She turned to Jace, who stood quietly at the edge of the circle. He saw me before the crown, before the fire. He stood beside me when I was nothing. She extended a hand. And now I ask him to stand beside me, as everything changes. The crowd murmured. Jace stepped forward, unsure. You sure about this? He whispered. I've never been more sure, she replied. He took her hand. Together, they lifted the crown, not onto her head, but between them. The arkstone glowed above, linking with the crown. Light surged, not from the throne, but from the people themselves. One by one, symbols on their armor, robes, and banners lit up, echoes of the royal mark. The mark of unity. The empire was no longer a bloodline, it was a bond. In the weeks that followed, the empire of Viridis transformed. The first act under Queen Sarai's name was to dissolve the command lords and install a multi-world council, half human, half alien. She appointed Jace as ambassador general, not just for diplomacy, but as a protector of those without voices. The Arkstone's full memory was uploaded across the galactic net. Truth flooded the systems. Riots ended. Peace talks began, and the stars watched, in awe. Late one night, Sarai stood on a balcony high above the capital. Jace joined her, holding 2 cups of steaming vapor brew. You look exhausted, he said. I am, she replied. But you're still standing. So are you. They smiled. Below them, lights danced in the streets. Music rose from a distant celebration. The city was alive again. I thought ruling would be the hardest part, Sarai admitted. And, Jace asked. Turns out, it's not. It's knowing that every decision might break someone, or heal them. Jace nodded. You were never meant to be a weapon, he said softly. What was I meant to be? She asked. He looked at her. Bridge, he said, between what was lost and what could be. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and for the first time in her life, the stars didn't feel so far away. They had won more than a war. They had built a crown of 2 worlds, together.